In the history of volcanic eruptions, there are a few that stand out from the rest. The eruption of Mount Vesuvius, which destroyed the Roman city of Pompeii, is probably the most famous of these. But there are many others, such as the one which created the island of Santorini, or the destruction of the city of Herculaneum, also by Vesuvius. Then there's the eruption of Krakatoa in Indonesia, which some say was heard 3,000 miles away. But none are more dramatic than the story of the town that froze in 2 minutes. This is the story of Mount in Martinique. On the morning of May 8, 1902, life was going about its normal routine in the city of Saint-Pierre. People were getting ready for work, children for school, and ships were coming and going from the harbor. The peak of Mountain active Volcano was smoking in the distance, but no one paid much attention. They had become accustomed to this over the years. There were even people who climbed the mountain for a picnic that day. Little did they know that in just 2 minutes, their lives would be over. At 9:34 a.m., the side of the mountain blew off in a massive explosion, unleashing a torrent of hot gas and ash down its slopes. It's called a pyroclastic flow and is one of the most deadly features of a volcanic eruption. Unlike lava flows, which move relatively slowly, pyroclastic flows can travel at speeds of up to 450 miles per hour, which is faster than a car on a highway. And unlike lava, which is only dangerous to those foolish enough to walk into it, pyroclastic flows can travel for miles, destroying everything in their path. Our story today starts with a small tremor in the earth, but quickly escalates into chaos. Our first eyewitness is Dr. Maurice de Sauz-Marez, who was on the ship, captain of which had decided to pull into the port of Saint-Pierre, despite the ominous smoke rising from Mont. But then the earth trembled beneath them, and they saw a dark cloud rising from the volcano, followed by another, and then another. And suddenly they heard a roar, like the blast of a cannon. At first, the doctor thought it might be a rockfall, so he started taking notes. Then the earth shook violently and he felt something strike the deck of the ship, knocking him off his feet. He looked up and saw a wave of debris rushing down the volcano's slopes. The captain immediately turned the ship and fled, but not before being hit by superheated gas. Several crew members were seriously injured and one was killed. They didn't stop until they reached the relative safety of Fort Deference, 22 miles away. When they turned back, they saw a black cloud hanging over the volcano. It was now clear that Saint-Pierre had been obliterated. Back in Saint-Pierre, the Reverend Father Julian Billuart was having breakfast in his home when he felt the tremors. He went outside and saw the dark cloud billowing above the mountain, and he heard the roar, the sound of the blast. He later wrote, "It seemed to me that all the demons of the infernal regions were howling at once." He rushed to the church to take shelter, but the roof collapsed, killing him instantly. Another eyewitness was Emily Bowie. She was a young, British woman living in Saint-Pierre with her husband and 2 children. She later recalled what happened. She said that she and her son were taking some clothes to a laundry room on the ground floor of their apartment building when the rumbling began. The son stopped to watch a nearby dog, which was also frightened by the commotion. Then Mrs. Bally noticed a heavy ash-like dust falling from the sky. She remembered thinking that if it wasn't raining soon, it would be dangerous. Just then, a deafening noise shook the windows and walls of the building. She described it as a loud, long-drawn roar, such as I have never heard, and I hope I shall never hear again. She felt the air grow hot and smelled burning wood. Then she saw a wall of cloud engulfing the mountain. She grabbed her son and ran to the stairs, where they sheltered until the danger had passed. Looking out of the window afterwards, she saw the roofs of houses around them had disappeared, exposing the wooden upper floors to the sky. She and her son survived, but her husband perished in the disaster. Some of the survivors suffered even worse fates. A man named Louis Alfred Dode was at work in the city's hospital when the explosion occurred. He took shelter under a bed, but when he came out, he saw that the hospital had collapsed and several patients were lying dead on the ground. He managed to flag down a passing boat and was taken off the island. He survived but suffered serious injuries and died later in hospital. Of the 30,000 people who lived in Saint-Pierre, only 2 survived. One was a bartender named Cyriac Lemeth, who was tending bar when the explosion happened. He managed to find shelter in a cellar, and when he emerged, he was the only person he could find alive in the entire city. The other survivor was Mrs. Benoit, who was sheltering in a concrete factory when the pyroclastic flow struck. Her shelter was destroyed, but she managed to survive with only minor injuries. Most of the victims died from inhaling superheated gases, which caused severe respiratory problems. Others died after suffering third-degree burns over their entire body. So how exactly did this happen? Martinique is a small mountainous island in the Caribbean Sea. Its highest peak is Mount Volcano, made up of layers of ash and lava. For centuries, it lay dormant, but in 1627, it erupted for the first time. Destroying the city of Saint-Pierre, it continued to erupt periodically throughout the following years, but nothing too dramatic. That was until 1902, 4 weeks before the eruption. The mountain had been rumbling and showing other signs of unrest, but no one really took notice. Then, on April 5th, a series of earthquakes struck the region. Martinique was hit with 15 quakes in one day, but they were not strong enough to cause any damage. However, scientists believe that the earthquakes were actually the result of magma pushing against the side of the volcano, creating gas bubbles and increasing the pressure. Then on May, the magma finally broke through, causing a powerful explosion and releasing a mixture of gas, ash, and rock. It's important to understand the difference between a lava flow and a pyroclastic flow. Lava flows are molten rock, which oozes out of a volcano. These can travel very far, but relatively slowly, and people can usually escape from their path. Pyroclastic flows, however, are extremely hot mixtures of rock and gas, which shoot out of a volcano at high speed. These are very dangerous, and anyone caught in their path almost always dies. In the case of the pyroclastic flow reached temperatures of 700 degrees Fahrenheit and moved at speeds of up to 100 miles per hour. It raced down the mountainside, swept through the city of Saint-Pierre, incinerating everything in its path. Houses burned to the ground, trees were uprooted and thrown great distances, and the streets were littered with corpses. Most of the city was turned to ashes. Within 2 minutes, the thriving capital of Martinique had become a smoldering ruin. A French battleship named Le Terrible was anchored offshore on the day of the eruption. It had come to take on supplies, but instead found itself caught in the path of the pyroclastic flow. It was hit by rocks and gas and thrown violently from side to side. But miraculously, it managed to stay afloat and was eventually able to leave the harbor. When help finally arrived 2 days later, they found only 2 survivors. One was sitting by the roadside waving a piece of cloth. The other was wandering around talking to imaginary people. One survivor who stayed put was found dead a few hours later, while the other wandered around the city for 5 days before being rescued. An investigation later found that there had been warning signs of the eruption. But unfortunately, no one had realized that they meant anything. The earthquakes, for example, were dismissed as nothing more than fireworks. Afterwards, scientists worked hard to monitor volcanoes more closely and try to predict future eruptions. To this day, the eruption of Mount Pelée is considered one of the deadliest volcanic eruptions of the 20th century. Now you need to watch. This is what $100 million looks like. Or have a look at this.